Okay, it is the week ending July 10th. I'm Xochitl Gonzalez. I am a writer, a journalist, a 2023 Pulitzer Prize finalist for commentary. And here are some of the things that I have been clocking this week. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's been a pretty bad, gross week. I think it's been a bad time in America, but it's weird how these things will just start to creep up again. And this week it was like, oh guys, ICE didn't go anywhere, by the way. They're still out there being evil. And the story that everybody in my algorithm is talking about right now is Lorenzo Salgado Araujo in Texas, who was on his way to work. He was working on getting his citizenship. It's so crazy to talk to you about how many people in Texas are undocumented. It's just such a part of life, but he's on his way to work. He's been working the same kind of work for 35 years, so I didn't even know how long he's been in this country, going with all of his equipment in the back, and the next thing you know, he starts being trailed by two unmarked vehicles. And his son was like, and I know his number one fear is that his work equipment is gonna be taken away. And so instead what happens is he doesn't realize these vehicles are ICE, and so he's driving in such a way, they pull him over, and now the man is dead. Beautiful family, put 3 kids through college, part of a community, and it is just, I think there's something like 20 people have been shot by ICE, mainly near their cars, so according to Paulo Ramos. 80 people have died in detainment, and 50 people have died in detention, and that's pretty bleak. I want to just say people are not doing nothing. Here's a little bit from Congressman Menifee from Texas 18.
I want to be clear. Somebody being killed by law enforcement is a big goddamn deal. What other profession has the power to take somebody's life in the middle of a street? And meanwhile, our administration is in court fighting to make sure people like Ronaldo and Lorenzo Jr. can't be citizens in this country. We need a full and transparent investigation into what happened here. And all of the evidence needs to be released to the public. There's an old saying that in Houston, you can ask a room full of people, it doesn't matter if they're blue collar, if they're white collar, to raise your hand if you know an immigrant to this country, and everybody will raise their hand. Raise your hand if you, keep your hand up if you know them better than just a passing conversation. Everybody will keep their hand up. Keep your hand up if they're undocumented, and people will continue to keep their hand up. We are a city of undocumented immigrants. They are our neighbors. Amen. They are our family. They are business owners, and they deserve to be treated with humanity and with dignity.
Talking about the danger of the police, which we all know. At this point, sadly, it's, anyway, particularly ICE, people with this much authority. In Texas, people are protesting.
People are here to work. Families are dying. People are dying. What are they doing? Murdering innocent Mexican people. They come to work. They come here to work. So what if they don't got papers? So what?
Immigrants are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear. Immigrants are welcome here. Say it loud, say it clear. Immigrants are welcome here.
It's not like it's stopped happening here. People are still protesting outside Delaney, even though protesting has clearly gotten so much scarier since those wild sentences were handed down in Texas. But people are offering free legal aid services to people caught up for protesting outside Delaney in Jersey.
Hey, you guys, my name is James Cook. I'm an attorney, licensed in California, Minnesota, Washington, D.C. I'm out here doing the same thing I did in St. Paul this winter, which is holding up a copy of my number and how to contact me. I'm in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, we represent any demonstrator and constitutional watcher related to ICE. We represent everyone for free. State court, it's been mostly, but recently there's been an indictment, the St. Paul 15, we're representing Natasha Rockets. We're looking for a local attorney in New Jersey who's willing to partner with us. And again, what I say is, for lawyers, this is your call to action, pro bono hours, and you know, what would you have done during the Japanese internment portion? What would you have done during the Holocaust? This is it. This is our time now.
But the stuff with ICE, it's grim and it's cruel and it's inhumane. Here's a U.S. citizen who was detained, tried to call 911. This is the New York Times reporting on this in a video, because he's basically being kidnapped. He's a U.S. citizen and is being detained by ICE. And he was like, I don't even know what to do. I'm going to try and call 911. You'll hear how the call goes. And then the agents are mocking him. They're mocking him.
911, what is your emergency?
Hi, I'm being kidnapped. I don't know where they're taking me.
I'm a U.S. citizen, and I was detained
You're touching a USA citizen right there.
for 5 days. I actually called 911.
I'm just in the van and I don't know where they're taking me.
You are with Border Patrol.
Okay, yes, but I'm a U.S. citizen and I'm hurt and I need an ambulance.
So, yeah, I cannot take your call. You're going to have to speak to them and wait for them to...
Okay, I'm only speaking with you because I need help.
Right, and I cannot send you help, sir.
I just hear the officers just laughing. They took the picture of me with the face recognition. You hear them laughing, high-fiving themselves like, hey, how many did you get? How many did you get? You know, oh, I got 18, I got 5, I got 6. Yeah, you know, high-fiving. You know, all of a sudden, it got alerted again, like who I was, and they seen that I was a U.S. citizen. So that's when then, you know, awkward silence.
ICE is also tricking people. This I had already been hearing about, but this one particular story this man posted on his social media was particularly sad. He went, they told him there was an issue with the kiosk to come back on Saturday. The guy works like 2 jobs, but he makes his way there on Saturday. And what happens? He gets swept up by ICE and now is in ICE custody.
My niece's husband, Nelson, was taken by ICE over the weekend. He is a Venezuelan asylum seeker who did everything by the rules. He showed up for his appointment, his immigration appointment on Friday, and was told that the kiosk was broken and that he needed to come back on Saturday. Of course, the building is closed on Saturday. He came back as he was asked, and ICE was waiting for him and illegally detained him. He is really the kindest man. He volunteered so much at a food pantry near his house that they offered him a job. And he works there during the day and he works overnights in agriculture. He's helping my niece get an education. She's putting herself through college right now. The reason that he is seeking asylum in the United States is that he was in the Venezuelan National Guard and was asked to harm civilians, protesters, and he refused. And so that put him at risk from the Venezuelan government. And so he went by the book, showed up at the border, requested asylum, and has been in this country legally as an asylum seeker, and now has been taken.
And obviously, we all know ICE is holding toddlers. We already knew this. Oh my God. Here's Congressman Brad Lander talking about his latest visit to immigration court in downtown New York.
I was back in immigration court again this week, this time for the hearing of a sweet little 3-year-old girl. I'll call her Estrella. She's been in federal custody, separated from her family for more than 10 months, even though her mom lives here in New York City. The cruelty is truly mind-boggling. Thanks to the door, Jews for Racial and Economic Justice, and her child advocate, Estrella had people speaking up for her, and I did so too, pleading with the judge that we should not keep this little girl separated from her mom any longer. The judge gave Estrella 21 days to file an asylum application, but I don't know how that's going to work because she doesn't have a lawyer, she's separated from her mom, and again, she's 3 years old. I wish I could tell you that this is an isolated incident, but it is not. The Trump administration has gutted policies that were designed to give immigrant kids access to legal counsel, relief from deportation, and the ability to be reunited with their families while they apply to stay in the U.S. As a result, children are being detained and removed at about 3 times the rate that they were during even the first Trump administration.
And then, I don't know, how much worse can this get? In Texas now, there are reports that Lorenzo's family can't retrieve the body because the ICE agents that pulled him over and then killed him then took his ID, and now there's not a way to identify the body, so they're claiming he's a John Doe and won't let his family come and take him away, and that they're going to bury him or cremate him as a John Doe. I'm just going to show you the report, and I haven't gone down the rabbit hole on this, but what I can tell you is even if they think this for a day, for half a day, how dare you, on top of what you've already done, now make them do this? It is like cruelty meets bureaucracy, and it's 2 things that I just find detestable.
I have a devastating update. Lorenzo Salgado Araujo's family members have been unable to claim his body. It appears that immigration officers stripped him of any form of ID after he was shot and eventually transferred to the hospital, which led to him being classified as a John Doe. As you could imagine, being able to claim their father's body is a priority for his children right now. According to LULAC representatives, they are making them jump through hoops to be able to complete this process. They also want to be able to get his phone back, any other items, other belongings that he had, his tools, as well as the van that he was driving. And there is a call to preserve all evidence in this case, to make sure that evidence is preserved for further investigations.
Breaking news tonight, ICE has admitted that it shot the wrong man. You know how ICE shot and killed Lorenzo Salgado Araujo in Houston, Texas? The 52-year-old man, 35-year U.S. resident? Yeah, well, he wasn't their target, and ICE is now admitting it in a bombshell new report this evening from the New York Times. ICE agents gunned this man down, this father down, despite the fact that he wasn't their target. They had no body cameras on them, so no video footage of the shooting. ICE now admits that agents were actually searching for two Guatemalan men. They thought they were in the vehicle with Lorenzo. They weren't. And yet they ended up shooting and killing Lorenzo, who's a 35-year U.S. resident, a father, a worker here in the United States, even though he wasn't the target of their enforcement operation. And the public will never know what actually happened because there were no body cameras on these ICE agents. There was no footage near the shooting. Everyone needs to know about this tonight.
Just to say, the world is watching. I think it's very important to note that after Lorenzo's murder, Claudia Sheinbaum, president of Mexico, who's not afraid to give us a spanking, filed a criminal complaint against ICE, feeling the need to pursue forceful legal action to protect the human rights of Mexican citizens in the U.S. According to the Mexican government, 14 Mexicans died while in ICE custody, and another during 3 ICE arrest operations. And in my opinion, I don't even know if we know that's the limit. I think what makes all of these stories worse to me is that these are the stories we're hearing about. What about the stories we're not hearing about? Meanwhile, over at the UN, we have the nerve to try to chastise Cuba for what they're doing to their citizens. And I just thought this was a great moment. We're telling them they're repressing human rights, accusing them of crimes against humanity, and the Cuban foreign minister did this.
Esta señora no puede ser excarcelada, ciudadana estadounidense, trabajadora, de familia honesta, porque fue asesinada por ICE de manera cruel y fría. El señor Wells se ha referido al tema de las detenciones arbitrarias, los derechos humanos, la represión y otras. Quiero mostrar esta foto. No es en Cuba, señor presidente, es en los Estados Unidos de América durante una redada de ICE. No encontrará usted en Cuba una imagen similar a esta de violenta represión contra manifestantes.
And worst of all to me, beyond the wars and the genocides we're funding, the cruelty that we're inflicting via ICE is gaining worldwide attention, diminishing what little credibility that we might even still have. And we are paying for all of this. Our tax dollars are paying for all of this. They just got billions more, billions guaranteed more, and they're working with almost no oversight. Meanwhile, according to The Guardian this week, half of Americans basically can't afford their lives. They can't afford groceries, they can't afford gas, so they can't afford their lives. But because Trump is an authoritarian, and this is what authoritarians do, we now have a crazy scheme to try to capitalize on Americans in need and get the vulnerable who might be slightly being like, is our president bad? Maybe I need to leave this cult, back into the fold by offering them freedom fuel. If you haven't heard, this seemed to have cropped out of nowhere, and I'm just gonna let this Philadelphia Inquirer clip play because I feel like if you're here for an education.
Why is dark money subsidizing the gas pump? This gas station is selling gas 20 to 50 cents cheaper than every other gas station in the area. So how can that be? Great question. Patrick DeHaan, head of petroleum analysis at Gas Buddy, can't figure it out either. Here's what we know. This station on Island Avenue in Philadelphia and this one on Dreshertown Road in Montgomery County are just 2 of 25 locations across the Philadelphia region and South Jersey that have rebranded under the name Freedom Fuel, where regular gas is selling for $3.47 a gallon. If the name looks familiar, that might be because the White House recently promoted the brand on social media. But despite their publicity, the White House says Freedom Fuel is a private company, meaning it isn't backed by federal funding or being subsidized in some way by the federal government. But they did say that the $3.47 price tag for regular gas is a nod to President Trump being the 47th president. So, how do customers feel about the change?
I'm not fueling his propaganda and nonsense. I'll save 50 cents and go somewhere else.
It looks like they rebranded, which is a little bizarre. I didn't know this was a Trump thing.
Does that change your mind about anything?
Yeah, it definitely does.
Drivers at the Island Ave location told me they didn't even notice the new branding. They stopped here simply because they saw the lower price. So, how is Freedom Fuel pulling off these prices at the pump? Gas Buddy's Patrick DeHaan crunched the numbers and said selling at this price is not sustainable, adding that when losses happen, somebody's gotta pay for it. So, who is that somebody, and what do they stand to gain by taking this loss? I, for one, would love to know. But Freedom Fuel did not return our request for more information.
So who's behind Freedom Fuel? What's it all about? We don't know. He promoted it on Truth Social, but the whole thing is so cynical and so disgusting. And the only thing that gave me hope in that clip is that people were not just, fine, I'll save 50 cents on gas. Donald Trump, they were like, I don't care. I'll go someplace else. And that makes me feel heartened that even in this moment of difficulty that so many Americans are going through, people are going to put principle over profit or price. And that's wonderful. But I think about all the people that are going to buy into it, and it gives them one more reason to put on their MAGA hat and claim that he's a gift to the earth from God. And now I'm going to get myself more down, though, because this week also saw the tragic news of Nolan Wells' death. And I already made a separate video about this, thinking about his parents and parents like him that are suffering from these kinds of profound losses. But he died clearly under very mysterious circumstances. Pretty much every report about Nolan by a human with eyes has made sure to make note of the fact that he went as the only black kid in a group of his white friends, many of whom seem, from what I'm reading, to be from wealthy backgrounds. And no matter what happened, at the end of the day, what I think is when I've seen some people in comments, white people in comments being like, who cares? Don't make this about race. And it's, no, but I think that what Black and Latino people are responding to is, but you don't leave your friend there. You figure out how that person's getting home. So what happened is, no matter what happened, what we know, what the kids are saying, is that they just left him there. He wanted to talk to a girl. They'd all been drinking all day, and they left him there to get home some other way, and then he never made it home. And even if we never learn anything more than that's already not great, okay? But the stories are not exactly straight. And the thing that I wanted to talk about, though, is not to go down the rabbit hole, because a lot of this is speculation, but it's to talk about the media and what the media is doing with this, and also to talk about a bigger problem that I'm now seeing that this is unearthing. So here's the picture that his mom posted. And you can see him with, I don't know if they were his teammates. He played football at a community college. They might be his teammates, but they're his friends. And then I was so intrigued because everybody else has made note of the fact that, oh my God, he's the only black kid. Also, how'd you lose him? He's the only black kid in this giant sea of white kids partying. And so I was intrigued to see that CNN decided to edit this clip to protect what exactly? Look at how that's cropped.
A family's desperate search for their teen son ends in tragedy after a water search involving 8 law enforcement agencies ends in heartbreak. Investigators believe they found the body of 18-year-old Nolan Wells in the water after he went missing from his friends during a crowded 4th of July boat celebration at Horn Island on the Mississippi coast.
And people cropped that same photo like this. And I just need to say, because it's worth saying, because we've got to start calling out these double standards, and I think it's the only way that we're starting to see, the reason we're seeing the break is that people in the real world are like, wait, I'm seeing reality here playing out like this, and now the media is giving it to me this way, and I'm skeptical. And I want to just say that we all know, and we need to state the obvious, that if the situation were the other way around, you can trust that nobody would have been cropping that photo to not show the people that he was surrounded with and who the last people were that saw Nolan Wells missing. We don't know what happened to Wells, but this young man who is upset that more white people weren't talking about this. And I've actually seen it now break through across my algorithm into mainstream media. But he made a compilation. He started looking into it based on people's complex. He made a compilation of other mysterious deaths that have recently befallen young people in America, young black people in America. The first video he made had 17 kids in it. I'm calling them kids. They're not all minors, but they're young black Americans that should be alive today. And these are 17 mysterious deaths that he just found on the internet. And then it wasn't enough because he needed to make a longer video of even more young black Americans who have lately gone missing, who have suddenly, after not having any mental health illnesses, suddenly hanging themselves from trees. It defies logic, but I'm gonna let the video play.
I posted a video yesterday about 17 black people who died mysteriously and quickly realized that this list is never ending. If you're white, please watch all the way through. We are not allowed to look away when we feel uncomfortable anymore. On June 29th, just last week, Gerard Jackson went to a music festival with his white friends before one of them contacted his mom and said he was missing and having a mental health crisis. His family says he's never struggled with that before. His friends say they took his phone and keys away and he must have taken his keys back while they were sleeping, even though he didn't take his phone. He was found hanging in a wooden area with his car over a mile from the festival grounds. During the period that he didn't have his phone, there were several attempts to log into his bank account and his Apple Pay was used at a local gas station. His family says there's no way he killed himself, and on top of all of this, they cremated his body without their permission. Turnia Nicole Miller was found hanging in a tree in Miami just 3 weeks ago on June 18th. She was there to celebrate Juneteenth and her death was ruled a suicide. Why the fuck would she post on Instagram that she was traveling for Juneteenth and then proceed to... In November of 2024, 15-year-old Jalen Reeves was stabbed to death 6 times by a 14-year-old white boy. That boy was later cleared of his second-degree murder charges, claiming self-defense. And guess what? His dad is a high-level executive at Axon. What's Axon, you might ask? An American company primarily developing weapons and technology for military and law enforcement, known for its taser electroshock weapons, a market it has dominated since 2003. He works for a police weapons manufacturer. In 2021, Jelani Day went missing and his remains were found weeks later in an Illinois river. Police ruled it an accidental drowning and his mom calls that an insult. She said Jelani was an avid swimmer and avid swimmers don't drown themselves. He has never had depression or struggled with mental health. In 2020, 15-year-old Kawan Charles was picked up by his white friend and his friend's mom, who allegedly gave them alcohol, weed, and mushrooms and didn't report him missing for 4 days after he said he was going to kill himself and left their house. He was found lying face down in a sugarcane field with only a few inches of water, and the official report says he likely drowned himself on purpose. How he could have drowned himself in 6 inches of water is beyond me. Willie Jones Jr. was found hanging in his white girlfriend's parents' Mississippi yard in 2018. Her stepfather says he didn't touch him, but Willie's family says he had an athletic injury that limited his shoulder mobility to the point that he physically couldn't have hung himself. Of course, it was ruled a suicide. The family did win a wrongful death lawsuit 3 years later, but to this day, no arrests have been made. In 2013, Kendrick Johnson was found inside a vertical rolled-up gym mat at his high school in Georgia. The initial investigation showed the cause of death as accidental, but when the family hired someone to perform a private autopsy, it showed the cause of death as blunt force trauma. Another interesting fact here, the 2 possible suspects were both the sons of an FBI agent. That was part of the lawsuit they tried to win, but for some reason, it didn't work out for them. Alonzo Brooks went to a party with his 3 white friends in 2004, was called racial slurs. His friends left him at the party with the perpetrators. He went missing and his body was found on the property a month later. The local pathologist couldn't determine a cause of death, but then an armed forces medical examiner concluded it was homicide. To this day, we have no answers. These are only the most public of cases and not even a fraction of them. Black people deserve to grow old.
I say this to say, America is a racist country, and I am not debating that in the least or questioning it, but I think that's something that we too often ignore because there's always racial violence in this country, obviously, but this spate of what seems like young black people being out with other people, often white people, winding up dead is troubling to me indeed. And we don't often like to call a thing until that thing is over and it's in the past and we feel like it's resolved, and then we can say, these were this or that was this. And I just want to say that it's hard to ignore what's happening and that it seems like this is happening more frequently when I have the knowledge that we're now sharing that economics exacerbates racial violence and xenophobia. It heightens feelings of racism and xenophobia around the world when studies have been done about this. And in America, we have seen this to be true, okay? And it's made worse by the fact that it often comes with economic downturns where people then turn to strongmen leaders, and then those strongmen leaders often love to point to racial minorities and ethnic minorities and say that's the reason why you're feeling bad. And that's exactly what we're seeing happening here in the US, but it's also not the first time that it happens. And I'm not, again, using this as an excuse because racism is racism. I am simply noting a pattern that puts communities of color in danger. If you look at the Gilded Age, the time period when we had the most wealth inequality up until now, you can trace it. You can trace it back and run graphs, but the era of the highest amount of lynchings in America from 1882 to 1920, I think the peak was at 1892, parallels economic inequality. Tulsa happened in 1921, right before all the robber barons were suddenly like, oh God, all these people are beating each other at union rallies and burning up black towns. We're like killing our labor force. And they saw what was happening in Russia. And they suddenly were like, maybe we should ease restrictions on people forming unions. And you started to see the inequality close, and you started to see the violence and the racial violence ebb through the process of unionizations, which mainly benefited white people. But you see this kind of trend again in the Great Recession. People just put it on Obama, but there is a corollary. Here's a study that I thought was really interesting. They looked at Google searches, and okay, here's what it says. Our empirical strategy exploits pre-recession cross-state variation in the two economic sectors particularly affected by the Great Recession, manufacturing and real estate. We find that states that were dependent on these sectors and hardest hit by the Great Recession experienced the largest incident in racist internet searches and experienced increases in hate crimes against Black Americans. And that is from our own recent history. So I am not using this as an excuse for racism. I am saying that white America has a racism problem, and bad economies and the feelings that go and emotions that go along with them seem to exacerbate this into violence. And I think that it's important for us to talk about this connection so that we can holistically move forward. And as we're making choices about candidates, about policies, about our media consumption, are we supporting the things that are talking about this holistically so that we're not just putting a Band-Aid over a problem that then just rears its head again up again in another decade because people are literally dying and in danger. We see everything that's happening with ICE relates to xenophobia drummed up by Trump due to a sense of economic immiseration amongst white Americans, right? And if I'm being honest, part of why I'm also particularly stressed about this connection is that I am actually very worried about the economy, even more so than we are now. This whole AI business, which anybody that follows me on Instagram knows I have been following, it is not looking good. A lot of their enterprise clients, their corporate clients, have started to find that it's actually not doing a great job, that their own proprietary information isn't secure, that it's not quite cutting the mustard, and that they need to bring back employees, that it's actually more expensive than what it's saving them. Here's Scott Galloway talking about how this feels like a bubble, that anybody that is around my age or older that remembers the internet bubble of 1999, it isn't that the internet went away or that .coms went away, but it certainly was a collapse, and I'm worried about it.
This sent chills down my spine. I had real deja vu of 99 again because this whole thing's crumbling. All of the demand that trickles down to the trillions of dollars of capex and infrastructure is now basically down to demand being created by two players, Anthropic and OpenAI. But Meta have basically said, oh, we overestimated the front-end demand we could create, so we're going to lease out our infrastructure. They're basically getting out early of these capex wars. They're going through the same cycle they went through with virtual reality. This all feels very 99 to me. We knew the internet was going to be huge, but the front-end guys, the application layer, the pets.com, the amazon.com, it was clear that they weren't going to be able to create the kind of revenue in the short term that justified their valuations. So everyone thought, about, wait, let's go to B2B. So we went from OpenAI to B2B, Anthropic, which was big in the enterprise, right? That's not to say these companies won't be great companies that'll be around in 20 or 30 years. Amazon lost 90% of its value in a 24-month period. It's obviously recovered then, and the internet has lived up to the hype. But they went through incredible volatility. It's gone from not what can AI do to will AI pay? And right now, we're starting to see real cracks in the wall.
And then today, I saw this from Ray Diallo. He's the founder of this whole big fund. He's a character, but he has some good insights, particularly about this stuff. Something worse than a recession is coming. And why? He sees the signs everywhere. Gold is climbing to new heights. Central banks are quietly stacking reserves. Countries are slowly breaking away from U.S. debt. Inflation is eating away at savings, and the dollar's dominance is fading by the day. I'm not sharing this for gloom and doom. It's meant to help us ready ourselves and make right decisions and use our time wisely as we get to these critical midterms where I'm certain some nefarious shit is gonna go down, and to be aware, to be prepared, to be helping people get to vote in a way that they are not gonna mess with. We are on a brink. All right, happy news. Here's a story that made me smile this week. Take your AirPods off and talk to somebody. One day, I believe it'll be better.
So I had a really interesting interaction yesterday and I wrote about it, so I am going to just read it. And it is called, Take Your AirPods Out. Today I flew home from Spain and followed my usual long travel day routine. Sit on plane, get through airport, don't talk to anyone. At JFK, I took the AirTran from Jamaica and then the MTA into Brooklyn. I was looking forward to that quiet in-between state, home stretch of traveling back. I could already feel the shower I was going to take. I just had to get through the next 30 minutes. AirPods in, world off. On the train, a woman asked me a question. I didn't hear her, my headphones were in, but she had already gotten my attention, so I looked up. We made eye contact. Warm eyes, on the older side, cute glasses. One AirPod out. Were you just traveling? Yeah, I was. AirPod back in, back to my phone. She said something else. I was confused because I had already answered, and in my mind, that felt like a clear end to the conversation. I looked up again, both AirPods still in, and she repeated herself. Where did you go? One AirPod out. I was in Spain. Her eyes lit up with this childlike wonder that reminded me of my grandma, one of my most favorite things about her, the way she sees the world with so much possibility. Spain? I've never been to Spain, but I've always wanted to go. Was it amazing? Something about the way she said it made me take both AirPods out and put them in my case. She had my full attention. Yeah, I said, it was really good. I traveled for work, and just like that, we started talking. The story could end there. There's probably a lesson in that interaction about how if you close yourself off to the world, you miss things that might change you, but I don't really feel the need to spell it out, because it didn't end there. Without getting too deep into details, because it's not my story to tell, I learned she lived a life full of trauma and loss. She talked about losing her husband at 28, her parents within 3 months, her daughter at the age of 56. Every time she said it, it landed heavier. The amount of loss she carried was hard for me to process, and still, she was open, warm, curious about the world, and eager to talk to me. She told me she's scared to fly, that she wants to see the world, but she can't get past that fear. She has family in Puerto Rico and wants to go home, but isn't sure that she ever will. My mind was racing a bit. I'm 27. I've been lucky enough to travel without anxiety and freely for years. She's 81, still has so much to see, but still figuring out how. I said, this sounds crazy since we don't really know each other, but if you ever want to go somewhere, I'd be happy to fly with you. I meant it. She looked at me. She knew I meant it. We kept talking. We're having dinner next week. I have no idea where my new friendship with Maria turns into, but I'm really glad I took my AirPods out.